brilliantly and whipped their behinds big time.
Well, let's talk about. I mean, I know Jake's already.
I'm out.
Flesh is crawling. Kansas out.
Yeah, there's a lot. You can sit there and make excuses. They lose by 1 point and played probably one of the worst games I've seen them play. So that tells you that, I don't know, we'll see how good Arkansas is next week in the Sweet 16. But, you have no coach. There was obvious coaching things that I picked out right out the gate by not pulling some kids out that were in foul trouble early in the second half. And, when you don't have your coach there, he is the lifeblood. And they respect him, even though I read a story where the kids were, when he came back to practice, they're like, oh, there's Coach. Thank goodness he's back. And then within like 5 minutes, they're like cussing him because he was running them into the dirt. But, at the end of the day, that was not the strongest team that Bill Self had. I give all accolades to Bill for putting up a decent team, getting a number 1 seed. But I didn't see them going past next. I want to see them in Sweet 16, but I didn't see them winning next week.
There were very few of the pundits, Jake, who had them in the Final Four, even though they were a top seed. I thought they had a chance because they would have gone out to Las Vegas. That's the regional they would have been playing in. And they could have done well out there because they matched up pretty well with those teams. But I'm in full agreement with you. When you don't have your coach, even though he's not out there playing, he is your coach who recruited you and can give you some sage advice, maybe screaming at you, but, it's not personal. And that element was missing yesterday on the sidelines, and I really do feel like that affected Kansas.
Yeah, I did too. And Arkansas is a good team. I don't know what the coach of Arkansas was thinking when he jumps up on the scores table and rips his shirt off. Act like you've been there before. This is their third straight Sweet 16 appearance.
Like
but
father
yet
and like son.
They just won the Super Bowl. So
anyway, his papa, Bill Musselman Sr., was just like that at Ashland, because the Bears played Ashland back in the late 60s, and Papa was the coach back then, and he had all this circus-like atmosphere and all that, colorful chairs and robes and all this thing, and Southwest Missouri kicked their behinds, thank you. All right, here comes the son, and the son's a pretty good coach. Steve Alford at Nevada took over for Coach Musselman, Eric Musselman. That's when he went to Arkansas, and that's where he is now. But that's a little bizarre, jumping up on the scorer's table and displaying all sorts of histrionics over your win. That's a little above.
Well, it's
above
just
board.
it's just the time of the year. It's just the excitement of doing these things.
It's second round.
Yeah, but still, you beat the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. You beat Kansas. So.
Well, you did, and you beat them by a grand total of 1 point.
But it's still a win. Still a W next to your name. Doesn't tell you how many points that is. So what was the bigger surprise to you, Kansas losing or Purdue?
The Purdue was not. Very few, including Waugh, did not have Purdue, who is really good. Zach Edey is a fine player, did not have a very good surrounding cast, in my opinion. And Matt Painter, Purdue's coach, has a history of going belly up in the NCAA championships. Actually, the one that surprised me more than anything was Princeton beating Mizzou. It didn't happen, and as I mentioned, until about 5 minutes into the game when I saw what Princeton was doing. Missouri, during the course of the season this year, and I love this defense that Coach Gates had with them, in your face, pressure defense, causing all sorts of turnovers. Well, Princeton wouldn't let them do that because no player kept that ball in his possession very long. They passed, they backpicked, they took Missouri right out of the defense, and then double-teamed Kobe Brown underneath. Well, double team usually doesn't stop Kobe Brown, but it did because the rest of the team was being forced out, couldn't hit their threes. I think they were 6 of 22, Missouri 6 of 22 from three-point range, and Princeton was 12 of 30 or something like that. There's a difference. That's 36 points from three-point range, but it was the defense and the double-teaming of Kobe Brown and the big kid, Tosan Obamawan, I think he's how he says his name.
That's easy for you to say.
Well, it is. But Princeton, hey, guys, do any of you know about the university itself?
Yeah.
It's about 30 or 40 miles from my hometown. Been there, beautiful campus, one of the toughest colleges in the world to get into. Not just everybody goes there.
Yeah.
So your athletes are usually very cerebral. You have to be. They graduate, 99% of their students. It was Albert Einstein's hometown. Come on, that says it all right there. But over and above all that, their basketball team has to play at a certain level because you don't recruit in the Ivy League. You get grants and aid. but you also get highly skilled, not necessarily physically skilled, but just their basketball acumen is very, very good. And these kids can play. You take a look at their schedule, and you say, well, these guys haven't played anybody. It's Ivy League, and then the other teams that they play are maybe Navy and Lafayette and Lehigh. And wait a minute, where are the big names? You know why they don't play big names? Because the big names won't play them. They're afraid of getting shown up on their own home courts and saying, Princeton beat you. But they're a good program.
There are some familiar names out of the field. We talked about Purdue being out, Kansas being out, Duke lost. I don't think that was really a surprise to anybody, but they're a name that people look for every season if you're just a casual basketball fan. But there's still a lot of familiar names left in the field. UCLA is still in, Gonzaga still in, UConn still in, of course, Arkansas, and we've got 2 number 1 seeds that are still left in the tournament at this point. And that is Alabama, and the other one is Houston. Yeah, doing really well right now. What's your thoughts as you reset your bracket? Who do you like, and who's your dark horses at this point?
Well, I don't think there is a dark horse. I don't think you can label that. Fairleigh Dickinson or somebody like that would have to qualify as that, and maybe Princeton. But they're good basketball teams. My favorite, and it was when the whole thing started, was Alabama. I think they win the national championship. They're a really good team. Houston is also good, but those two played each other. And Alabama ended Houston's winning streak at the start of the season. I think they'll do, if they were to match up again, I think that would happen again. Alabama's an awfully good basketball team. I'm putting stock in them as the odds-on favorite to win it all.
What about you, Jake?
Yeah, I've got Alabama also winning it. As far as dark horses, I do have UConn going all the way to the Elite Eight, as well as Indiana. So I think Indiana's going to come. A lot of people don't. We're from the Midwest, but we're all Big 12 around here, or SEC. So you don't get to see these kids play, but you start doing some research on them, and you're like, oh, okay. So the matchups are there. I do have Indiana beating Houston next week if Indiana makes it this far, but I do have Bama winning it all.
Let me go out on the limb here with the team that nobody's mentioned, but their coach would be a guy to look out for because he's the one that always has his team prepared at this time of year, and that's Tommy Izzo, Michigan State.
For sure. They do play, and they're a very skilled basketball team, but somewhere along the line they usually falter because he has good athletes, and Izzo is a brilliant coach. And a brilliant motivator, too. He's very bright. But in terms of the overall skills of their team, their record doesn't really justify the thought process that they can go through the rest of this thing and make it. But again, you don't know. You just simply don't know because so many magic things happen in the NCAA.
You're listening to Ned Talk, your local live sports program talk show here on 104.7 The Cave. Hosted by myself, Joe Westen, Ned Reynolds, Jake Gillette with us today from the Biggie team, and we're just sitting around talking about the NCAA tournament. And what was the biggest surprise for you in the first round? I mean, you mentioned the loss that Mizzou took, but we're in the other the Fairleigh Dickinson.
Tell you well, of course, anytime you have a 16 beating a 1, that's a huge surprise. But the one that really, this will come as a shock to you guys, is Oral Roberts and Duke. I thought Oral Roberts would beat Duke. Oral Roberts was a sweet Elite Eight. They were an Elite Eight team 2 years ago. They were loaded. They had, boy, I tell you, they played the Bears down in Tulsa this year and had a 23-point lead. Gave it away, but still won the game. They were big. They had that big transfer from Arkansas playing at center. And this is a Duke team that's just primed and ready for behind kicking, and yet Duke won by, I think, 22 or 23 points. They blew ORU out of there. That one surprised the daylights out of me. There have been some others, too. Of course, the number 1 and 16 wins. But again, it is playing out, as you pointed out, Joe, just a second ago. Most of the big-name teams that we identify with are still in this competition. And anything can happen in there. That's the nature of the NCAA tournament. It's matchups more than anything else.
Your point taken exactly. I mean, we talked about that a little bit last week. I want to get Jake's thoughts on this too. And it's so different from college football is that the matchups in basketball can be just confounding. And Ned, you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about the Mizzou loss. Matchup wasn't good for Mizzou. And you can face a team that you should, on paper, beat, but matchup-wise, you just don't fit with them.
Yeah. Coaching-wise,
yeah.
You don't fit with it, and which is not a knock at Coach Gates. He's done a great job up at Mizzou in bringing new kids, blending them in. He took 3 or 4 kids from Cleveland State and brought them in there because they were able to play what he wanted them to. And I'll tell you, they're good. They were very good. But they didn't match up with Princeton. And Princeton was, again, kept the ball away from the Missouri defense. Missouri, during the course of the year, we mentioned this earlier, scored something like 24, 26 points a game on turnovers. Had 9 yesterday, 9 points a game, because Princeton wouldn't let them do it. And that was just a brilliant level of basketball.
Yeah, and that's why I think the 64 field of 64 and why the NCAA basketball side of the collegiate sports has it, and it owns when it comes to the sport, everybody looks forward to this time of year.
Let me ask you guys a quick question. I have my opinion on this, but there is a move afoot, and it's a very strong move afoot, to raise that tournament from 68 to 90 and bring in 90 teams. What do you think?
I mean, you're asking. So when would they start this tournament?
Next year.
Right now it starts on Thursday.
Well, yeah, but remember now, you have all these new teams that would be in there, but they're all going to be eliminated after the first round. So your field is constantly cut in half, and it would work out probably. They might have to add another week onto it, maybe. But I think probably right now the way they're structuring this thing is it would occur over the same period of time.
So it wouldn't start any earlier in the week. So the playing games will start on Tuesday.
It might, and they might also alter that play-in round too.
I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, it's a move.
And that's now you're basically taking in half because there's 207.
No, 350, 350
I didn't
Division
realize
I
that.
teams.
So okay, well,
wasn't there a Coach K? I think was a proponent of everybody.
John Wooden.
John Wooden was
said that
everybody in the tournament added 2 rounds to it.
It would add about 2 rounds, but he said, hey, it's not going to be all that much because keep in mind, after the first round, half that field is gone.
True.
Yeah. Interesting. It's hard for me to say.
Let me ask you this right now: how much NIT basketball do you watch? The answer is 0.
Think about that.
The answer is
about
0.
None?
So if they did, because you're basically eliminating the NIT, right?
In a sense, you are. Remember now, the NCAA owns the NIT, so they govern that as well. But it might. The NIT is only 32 teams.
Correct.
They might chop that in half. I don't know. I'm guessing that these might all be alternatives that you could use.
Yeah, and I'll just bring that to a point. There's your 90th. There's your teams right there. You had 30-some, 40-some teams. So, I mean, but if it's not going to change it very much, and you say the first day you're cutting it in half, you're back to 64 real quick.
They are right there.
Why not?
I don't know. It's really hard for me to. I'm like you, Jake. This is the first I've heard of it, and the only thing that's driving this, I assume, is money.
Oh, it's exactly what it's about, sure.
Because I don't think it adds anything to the tournament.
Well, it gives the teams that do a lot of carping and griping and say, hey, we should have been included in all that. That takes, just like they're doing with the football, that takes them out of the mix. And like Jake pointed out, you can cut your NIT field in half and make them, and they get more money.
But it would get rid of the conference championship games, meaning anything at that point.
I think they have that factored in. I think they stay in place.
Because I would think if you're if let's say a smaller seed, let's say Missouri State wins the Missouri Valley, they're in, right? Mm-hmm. Well, back in the day they didn't make it a couple times, but
they're into the NCAA.
But if they're in the championship game, would they not then be considered to go to the big dance? Even if they lose?
Depends on what their record would have been during the course of the year. But, yeah, they would be a strong consideration for that. And again, it takes away that griping if they're not. The one adjunct that the NCAA has put into that, if you're a conference champion, you are automatically in the NIT. So if you lose in your championship game and you don't qualify for the big dance, you're in the NIT. Okay, eliminate that and cut your NIT field in half, make it 16 teams instead of 32. There you have a pretty good number.
I don't know because there's such the pool for college football is so small with 4 teams, and the pool of teams that don't make it I think there's a good case for most of those teams not making it. Every year there's one or two teams that you go, Missouri State's a perfect example. The year that they didn't go, that they should have gone, they had a great season. Coach Berry,
2006.
Yeah, Coach Berry was highly disappointed. But that's just a small number, and then you're diluting the field even further.
Well, and you say that about football. You make the comparison because football is going to 12.
Yeah.
Excuse me. In next 2024, they'll go to a 12-team playoff. All right. You're putting in teams that do a lot of complaining when they haven't gotten picked. They're not going anywhere. They're going to win one, maybe two games at the most, and then that'll be it. In the basketball situation, it's a different level of competition altogether, and you're much more evenly balanced. Your parity level is much more the equity in basketball is a little bit better than it would be in football. Football's a power game.
Sure.
Basketball's a skill game, allegedly. Although they sure look pretty powerful out there to me, those big kids.
For sure.
Well, I think that I'm not a fan of the play-in game. I think you either make the tournament or you don't, and the play-in game is a little demeaning.
I don't watch the play-in games.
No, and most of the time they're teams that you've never heard of before.
And the play-in
Southeast
games,
Missouri, though, was in it this year.
The play-in games don't matter when it comes to the bracket challenge. You don't have to pick those games to.
No, you're assigned into those games, and they're all. Now, I say they're all low seeds. They are not, because you had Pittsburgh, who we're looking at now against Xavier. They were a play-in team and won their game by 1 point, I think it was. But you also have Southeast Missouri and Fairleigh Dickinson. Texas Southern was another one that was in there. It's divided. So on each of the 2 nights, you have a lower level or mid-major or lower level major, and then 2 power-based teams. It's again, the NCAA's thought process here is to give some of these teams more of that TV money, and they will be getting it if they do raise it. And I say 90, it's in or around 90. It may be 92 or something like that. And it hasn't happened yet. It's got to pass the NCAA convention, which is the NCAA. All the colleges vote on this thing. It isn't just a group of people. It's the entire group. But the fact is that it does have some merit to it. I'm not a fan of it. I like the way it is right now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Your thoughts on it. Jake, what do you think? I mean, just off the top of your head.
I like the way it is now.
Me too. I agree. I don't like the playing game part of it, but I do like the field of 64. I don't mean to be a traditionalist or an old man here, but I just like the way that it's set up now, the way that it happens.
If you're a traditionalist, you're going back to when it was a field of 16.
Well, if I'm a traditionalist, my dad would always point it out to me that at one time the NIT was the tournament, and the NCAA was the second.
It's the oldest. It's the oldest of the competitions, and there was also a time in my not time on earth, but in my time as a cognitive sports fan, when you could play in both.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it happened right until the early 1950s. You could play in one and play in the other one.
Well, if you're a Bears fan and you go to the games, and you'll see there's a couple of national championship banners hanging in the arena, and those were won during times when the major teams didn't play in the NCAA tournament. They would play in the NIT tournament.
That is true, 52 and 53, but the Bears were a small college team when they won that, and that's the NAIA national tournament they won. It's not NCAA. But the two organizations differ, but I remember very well the teams in New York, two of them who did that, played in both the tournaments, are now no longer playing. Let me backtrack on that, too. One was CCNY, which doesn't play anything anymore, and the other is NYU, which when I was in college was a big-time Division I team cut down to Division III. So their level of basketball now is very limited. But Long Island University, which was also a biggie, is playing D1. They played in both of them. I think Bradley may have played in both tournaments, but it did exist.
Yep. When we come back, we'll talk about what's happening in the world of the Kansas City Chiefs. It's Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, part of the Kansas City Chiefs Radio Network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave. A proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
Let's check in on those Kansas City Chiefs and see what's going on. Free agency opened up, and there's been some movement around. The Chiefs have lost a couple of players. Orlando Brown is gone. He is playing with Cincinnati. That's a big one in both ways, and I'll get your opinions on this. Mine is that you lose a solid left tackle, which is the guy that protects the blind side of the quarterback, and he went to a team that is your conference rival, and one of their big problems is keeping their quarterback upright. So that's a huge loss in two ways.
It is, and I think the Chiefs lost a whole lot more than that, too, in my opinion. Now, Jake is much more into the inner workings of the Kansas City Chiefs than most of us. But losing Orlando Brown, but then losing Andrew Wiley, he'd been on that offensive line all that time. Losing Juju Smith-Schuster, which did surprise the daylights out of me. He's going to the New England Patriots. Juan Thornhill out of the defensive backfield, he's gone. He went to the Cleveland Browns. And now here's Thornhill is reported to be trying to recruit McCole Hardman to go to the Cleveland Browns as well. Hardman's a free agent. He could go anywhere. I'm not sure the Chiefs really want him back. But, again, you're running into a situation in which veteran members of a championship-level program are now being pushed aside, and, again, that's the nature of the NFL. That does have to happen. How about Ezekiel Elliott? Gone after 7 years. Why? Well, the running life of I should say the life term, not literally speaking, but of effectiveness for a running back is about 4 to 5 years, and he's been there 7 years. Hey, time to say so long. It is a business, guys. That's the way it works.
What's the most surprising for you, Jake?
With the Chiefs?
Yeah.
Oh, I always say in Brett Veach, we trust, right? And Andy Reid. Like you have, so I don't question a whole lot because every year after year, especially this last year, with being told that the Chiefs would come in second place in the AFC West, that they weren't going to make the playoffs, and all this crap that was being said at the beginning of the year, and of course the media likes to make things big announcements like that to get people worked up, but they turned around and they won the Super Bowl, right? And they really didn't even have there was no question. The fact that they went 14-3 this year was amazing to me because we lost Tyreek Hill. We had some things going where we had new players like Valdez-Scantling and Juju that had to learn the system. And then you have people like Sky Moore and some, McCole Hardman was hurt all year long, it felt like. So you have these two guys who is Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and they did it again, right? And then you have Isaiah Pacheco that just came out of nowhere and surprised everybody. And so at the end of the day, yes, I think it hurts losing Orlando Brown, especially after what the Chiefs offered him in the offseason, a 6-year contract worth way more money than Cincinnati just gave him. But it didn't work out this time. And again, we were talking about off air, it came down to his agent. Like, it wasn't even Orlando Brown. It was his agent that said no, and then look where they're at now. So, Jawan Taylor is going to replace him. I think he's going to do just fine. We got that kid from San Francisco on the defensive side. Yeah, he's going to be fantastic. And you got leaders. You have natural leaders on the team, on the field, with Chris Jones and Pat Mahomes that is going to, bring them all together. I think, surprisingly, the Frank Clark one, I just thought that was kind of odd that they couldn't come to terms. That was one because it felt like he was going to be a lifer, like he's going to retire a Chief, and then he's gone.
But there are so many factors that we don't know about. Number one, staying within the salary cap, you've got to do that. And number two, we don't know about the clubhouse and how these guys, you've got such a diverse level of individuals. Is it a pipe dream to think that they all come together and all sing Kumbaya and all that sort of thing?
Sure.
Yes, it is a pipe dream. That doesn't happen. But how significant is there in a disparity level of things? Those are things we don't know, and that may be one of the reasons. Again, guessing, don't know any of that for certain.
Do you think the Chiefs take a step back this year to kind of regroup themselves to go forward maybe in 2024? You don't think so?
Nope, you win every time out there. It's
Well,
not a matter of doing that, no.
Hey, this is a weird year because last year Tyreek Hill was the guy that went. And this time last year when we were talking, it was later than this when he got traded, but we were talking about, you're losing a generational player. They brought in veteran guys to replace him. They brought in Juju Smith-Schuster and they brought in Valdez-Scantling. Yeah. He's under contract for 2 years. He was a big savior for the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game because he not really done much all year long, but when everybody was down, he was there and Patrick Mahomes went to him and you're able to count on him. You have to have some weapons, and right now they're depleted weapon-wise offensively.
I thought they were too, Joe, last year when Tyreek Hill went. And matter of fact, when we had our Chiefs get-together down here in Springfield back in July, Mitch said, Reynolds, what do you think? And I said 12-5, and he said, no, they'll be better than that. I said, how can you be when you don't have Tyreek Hill? Because they have the catalyst, Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to have somebody to throw to, and you have to have somebody that.
I think this is the breakout year for Tony. I really do. If he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be the wide receiver number one.
Staying healthy though.
That's Mike's conversation that I had with him is that Mike, the intern, by the way, is that he felt that Tony was the guy. I'm not so sure about that guy because the Giants were glad to get rid of a guy that has huge, obvious upside. He is a game changer when he's healthy, but I don't think that I think he's the type of guy that little things become big things for him. And I also think he's probably a little bit of a head case too. A little bit. I mean, the way that the Giants were like, here you go. Just take this guy, take a guy that's obviously talented.
And another thing too, Joe, and you only put a limited amount of stock in this, but the emails from Giants fans, your problem. So long, Chiefs. He's you got him now. You need him. He may be a bit of a problem, but the guy does have physical skills, and he is very, very quick. But you also saw that he's very fragile. He went down in one of the playoff games. He had an ankle or something go wrong with him. Well, you're going to take these hits. You're a wide receiver. You damn well better get used to it.
Yep, for sure.
Mike Edwards joins the Kansas City Chiefs. He's from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is on a 1-year deal. That is shores up and gives them a little more veteran presence in that secondary right now. They signed another linebacker, Drew Tranquil, who played with the Los Angeles Chargers. Honestly, the guy's name I don't know, and I was a little surprised by it because one of the strengths of the Kansas City Chiefs is that linebacking.
Well, keep in mind now that a lot of these signings that are taking place are to promote some kind of a level of depth that you have when you go into training camp, and some of them won't make the team. It's a proven case. It'll happen. You can get big names in there, that's true. So, again, putting a lot of stock in what they're doing right now, especially with the lesser-name individuals. And, of course, training camp is a whole lot more limited now, but the whole scheme of things is changing, and I'm of the opinion that somewhere along the line when they go to 18 games, and I think they will, this whole scheme of things is going to change in terms of preseason games and training camps and so forth and so on.
Jake, there's some names left out there as far as free agency goes. Your thoughts on any of those joining the Kansas City Chiefs? Maybe Aaron Rodgers will come and be a backup for a little while. What do you think?
Aaron Rodgers is his own backup. That guy is he is. I'll tell you, man. You talk to Packer fans and they're all ready for him to just go. But then you hear what the back office says of the Packers, and they're still kind of holding on to him. And it's like he says he wants to go for of course he wants to go to the Jets, but then he wants to take all of his toys with him, and holding that over the Jets, asking for people like Mercedes Lewis to come, Lazard. Then Odell Beckham was on that list, and I'm like, okay. I mean, and look at the Jets though. Look what they did this year with the juggling of the quarterbacks, and they actually had a really good year.
They came on. They played well.
Yeah, they did. So that's as far as free agency, obviously Rodgers owns the headline there, just because you got Garoppolo going to the Raiders, which surprised me. But then after I posted something online, a friend goes, Jake, there's nobody else out there. Like, who else? He goes, and he's a Denver fan. He goes, you guys have it all with Mahomes. And he goes, you can really pick only 5 quarterbacks in the entire league that everybody wished they had. And then the rest of them is up for grabs. And, and he's right. But look what the Panthers are doing by giving away some things to get that number 1 pick so they can get whichever quarterback they pick, whether it's the kid from Alabama, or I think the kid coming out of college out of Kentucky is the one that's going to be.
Very good ball player.
He looks good. He's big, and man, he throws a hard ball. So as far as free agencies, we're just going to wait and see how this Aaron Rodgers thing pans out. There might be a couple of guys, but like Ned said, Chiefs can bring them in for training camp, see how they work, and then start cutting them.
Exactly.
And see if they still have anything left in the game to offer for 1 year, just like Juju did with us.
And Lamar Jackson's name's still out there a little bit, too. I mean, possibility.
Baltimore would be crazy to let him
Baltimore
go.
will re-sign him.
There's no way.
Hmm.
What do you think of Baker Mayfield going to the Tampa Bay?
Now, see, he steps in for Tom Brady there, and Baker Mayfield does have an upside to him. He's been with teams that have been not all that strong. Of course, I don't think Tampa Bay is all that strong either, but at least he's going to get a shot at being the number 1, at least right now, the designated number 1 quarterback, where he was not with the Cleveland Browns, nor has he been anywhere else. Baker Mayfield, guys, come on. Oklahoma, the guy did a lot. He has a big background.
Yeah, I think he needs to feel he's the number 1 guy and have nothing behind him trying to push their way through. And when anybody like that, when you know you are it, then I think you do put your best foot forward.
Sure.
It's when you start making mistakes because you feel like the guy behind you is watching you with a magnifying glass of every mistake so I can have a shot, right? So I think you're right. I think in Tampa Bay he may actually do well for them, even though they really don't have a team. Like their defense is kind of faltering and they got the weapons, but they didn't do much last year.
I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him shine and do very well down there, which is not predicting anything for the Bucs, but he's Baker Mayfield's a good ball player.
He's waiting for. He's picked the wrong profession if he's wanting to get somewhere where somebody's not standing over your shoulder watching what you do.
For sure.
You've been polluted by your new partner. That's all I've got to say about that.
Uh-oh.
All right. First round draft pick, Chiefs. What do they pick?
I think they go for the offensive line. They go for somebody big and dominant on the offensive line. And then in the second rounds, defensive line. They're going for line people. They've got to have depth.
I agree. I think it's going to be some of these guys that aren't going to be flashy names. I wish we'd go out and get another wide receiver, but because I do think we have the picks to make a package to offer someone to move up in the draft to pick somebody.
City's got 11 picks.
Yeah, so I do think you got to protect your quarterback because when you give Pat Mahomes or any quarterback in the NFL, if they have the time to throw, is going to be fantastic. So you got to protect your franchise player too.
When we come back, we'll talk about the World Baseball Classic and baseball in general. It's Ned Talk.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, part of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave. A proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
Joe Westen, Ned Reynolds, Jake Gillette talking sports on a Sunday afternoon. Springtime. Got some college basketball on the TV. And, of course, we've got preseason baseball, which is spring training baseball, and I love that. I love just everything baseball, and World Baseball Classic going on.
Every 4 years it does, except this year's a bit of an anomaly because of COVID. But they are playing it this year, and it's down to now the semifinal round. And this is really interesting. Team USA is still in the competition after a come-from-behind 9-7 win last night. Grand slam homer for Trey Turner in the 8th inning, and they knocked out Venezuela. And that was Venezuela's first loss of the tournament, but it comes at the wrong time in the knockout round. And they're gone. Venezuela had all major leaguers in there. Also, they lost Jose Altuve with a broken thumb. Got hit by a pitch, and geez, that's all you need.
Eek.
Anyway, now you have the USA playing tonight. They're playing in Miami, and they're playing Cuba. Well, what is Miami?
Little
Cubans.
Havana.
Yeah. And the fans will be there. Now, the stadium, the Marlins Stadium where they're playing, it's got a name, Long Depot something. It's a bank of some sort that's got the name right.
LoanDepot.com.
Is that what it is?
Probably.
LoanDepot.com. That would be it. Anyway, Lone Depot Stadium, whatever it is, they've reduced the seating capacity, and it's now down to about 35 or 36,000. Is a full house in this one, and that's what they had last night, and that's what they will have tonight. And guys, if you're looking for some kind of political intrigue along with the athletics, I would watch this one tonight because it will be fascinating to see the fan reaction here.
I love watching the fans in all these other countries. I watched a little bit of some of the games in the Far East competition, and just the fans were phenomenal. They love baseball. They love it the way we used to love baseball in this country. And so it's not a wonder that if you're a casual baseball fan, you would probably go, well, America wins the World Baseball Classic. It's our game. We win it. We won it last time that it was around, but that was a bit of a surprise. And if they were to win this time, it would be a surprise.
Both times would be, Joe, and you're right about 2017, the last time they had this. USA beat Puerto Rico in the championship game, and it was a phenomenal upset. Was not supposed to happen. USA this time, even though the team is loaded with all these, gosh, you got Mike Trout, and you've got Arenado, and you have Goldschmidt, Schwarber, all these big sluggers coming up there, still the balance of the team and the chemistry. The team that's favored to win it now, there are 4 teams left. USA and Cuba, they play tonight. Mexico, which beat the USA 11-6 earlier in pool play, plays Japan, and the Japanese team is undefeated. Shoji Ohtani, Lars Nootbaar of the Cardinals, playing on the Japan team. They have they're loaded. And they're the favored team to win the whole thing now.
Aren't all the teams that are playing left, have all of them, I think, have won championships except I don't
Cuba. Mexico. I don't think
Mexico's not one.
But they're good. Hey, the Mexican team, they're Benji Gill, who's their coach, is the infield coach for the Los Angeles Angels, and he's a manager, big league manager in the waiting. He's going to be a very, very good manager with some team. But all their teams, the Mexican team, heck, I'll tell you who's playing for them is a Cuban expatriate named Randy Arozarena, who played down here. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this all shapes up.
It's been a lot of fun to watch. It's great competition. And like I said, I love watching the fans because you don't see anything like it. I mean, really the closest comparison, and I know if Josh was here, he would laugh. Yeah, you get the soccer comparison because it's constant noise, it's constant excitement, and
chants and horns
and we kind of sit on our hands when we watch baseball games, and then when something exciting, we got
different culture,
we applaud. So we've gone through. We've gone through about 2 weeks now of spring training baseball, 3 weeks of it. And yesterday I turned on a game and I was watching, and before I knew it, the game was over. And the announcer said 2 hours, 18 minutes. And that's a phenomenal time. That brings a smile to my face because that's what baseball needs. It needs to get that number down.
I think the average, Joe, is now 2:35 or 2:40 somewhere. It's 25 minutes shorter than what it had been last year.
And we should point out, being baseball guys like you and I are, that typically a spring training baseball game lasts about 17 hours
somewhere
because they do so much pitching changes. There's so many things that go on. They're randomly, because the guy's reached his pitch limit, then in the third inning the pitcher comes out. You've got a pitch change that you wouldn't see normally in a Major League Baseball game. So looks like to me that this is a win for Major League Baseball if they can carry this into the season. What are your thoughts?
Well, they will, of course, carry it into the season. It's mandated now. You have the 15 and 20-second rules. But how it will work, we're in an experimental stage. I think, we saw it down here for the last couple of years in Double-A baseball where the experiment was being tried, and the games here were a good 25 minutes shorter from what they had been. I guess it all plays into the mindset of the fans. Fans back in the old days when we loved baseball. Again, the game was differently played back then, too. Pitching probably didn't dominate quite as much as it does now. But in terms of the games being longer, didn't seem to bother us because they probably weren't longer. I remember the great 13-inning no-hitter that Harvey Haddix lost against the Milwaukee Braves back in 1957 was under 3 hours. 13 innings, and I think it was 2 hours and 40 minutes. The late Bill Verdon played in that game. He said, I didn't remember it being that short, but it was. And the games have differed. And the whole structure of the way baseball is played now has differed. But the powers that be said, hey, we need to make these things. We need to keep the fans in the stands and keep them satisfied. So let's augment rules now, bring them into place. Let's install them. And the pitch clock is the big one.
More importantly, let's keep butts sitting on couches, watching TV and taking in the commercials. What's the latest on the Bally Sports disaster? They
declared bankruptcy, Bally Sports. It's all called Diamond Sports. They're the controlling group. Sinclair TV is the one that really controls all of them. But the Bally's, which runs 14 of the 30 Major League Baseball teams, has the baseball contract, declared bankruptcy the other day, but it's Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And when you declare Chapter 11, the referee, who is the judge, says he's the one who makes the rules on this. What they normally do is say, okay, you're going to restructure your finances, and according to all the experts, Bally Sports is $9 billion in debt.
Wow.
$9 billion.
Somebody needs to take away the company credit card,
well,
right?
I don't know how they're going to reorganize this, but once you do, you're allowed 6 years to reorganize. The first ones you pay off are your creditors, which are your bankers and your lending institutions. Then you can pay off your clients. Well, the Cardinals get $60 million a year from Bally Sports. $60 million. They ain't going to see that this year. Now, Major League Baseball has already said, we have an alternative plan in mind. I don't know what it's going to be and how the teams are going to be paid off, but that part of it remains in limbo. In terms of the bankruptcy, they being Bally Sports, did file bankruptcy, and it goes into effect, I guess, right away. The referee the judge will make the decision as to who gets paid and who doesn't. You're free of all your debt.
Yeah, it should be very interesting. I mean, it's scary if you're a baseball fan because these are large numbers that teams were counting on that they're no longer going to be able to get. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a bigger have-not divide if something's not stepped in and done.
Some of the huge salaries that we have always made, boy, how are they able to pay all this? Well, that's how. That's going to start to come down. And you knew this was going to happen somewhere along the line, not just in baseball, but in the other sports. Bally Sports not only does baseball, they've got the NBA and the National Hockey League, too. They do not have the NFL. NFL is governed by a altogether different television plan. But the other three, hockey, basketball, and baseball,
they're all going to be pinched by this one. Mm-hmm. So it's a big deal. Thanks, Ned, for keeping us up on the business of sports. When we come back, we'll talk about what we're watching on TV this afternoon. I have a feeling I know what these guys are going to answer. Ned Talk.
You're listening to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, part of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network. Back to Ned Talk on 104.7 The Cave, a proud member of the Kansas City Chiefs radio network.
Let me just say that if you have Pitt going all the way, your bracket's probably busted. They're losing right now by 20 to Xavier, 74-54. If you did have Pitt going all the way, chances are you're not listening to us. I'm Joe Westen, Ned Reynolds, Jake Gillette. We're talking sports, and it's just about the end of our show, and we always kind of wrap up by talking about what we're going to do with our afternoon on this Sunday. Ned, what are you going to do?
Well, I was going to go home and watch Kansas State, Kentucky, and I'm really anxious to see that one. Then later on this evening, the USA baseball game against Cuba. Do want to see that.
Jake, you?
Same, yeah. Here in about 40 minutes, that Kansas State versus Kentucky game kicks off. That'll take up most of my afternoon. Then Ned, you may have talked me into watching this game tonight.
If for no other reason, the political drive in this one needs. This is in Miami, and in Miami's it's Little Havana now. Yeah. Come on.
Yep, that's great.
I don't know what I'm going to watch, to tell you the truth. I probably will go home and watch a little bit of basketball. I will try to flip around, see if I can find any Major League Baseball games to watch, because that always kind of the focus of my life. Just baseball.
Hey, we're only 11 days away from the opener.
Really, 11 days?
It's March 30th.
Wow, it's just really snuck up on me. Who's playing in the opener? Do you know?
Cardinals open up with the Toronto Blue Jays in St. Louis, and the Royals open up with the Minnesota Twins in Kansas City.
But who's on that? Usually ESPN has a
big game,
a Sunday night game. Who's that opener? Do you know?
I must admit to you, I don't know who that is. Do not know.
I'm so excited. I love baseball so much. The World Baseball Classic going on. I'll definitely take in that game tonight. USA, Cuba. Or no, USA, Cuba. It should be a very good baseball game. I'm a good buddy of our show, Michael Vincent, said, "Don't be fooled when those Cuban guys play with the aluminum bats. They're stone cold killers." He said, "You don't want to mess with them and aluminum bats." Hey, Ned, I'll see you next Sunday. Jake, hopefully you'll be with us next Sunday. It's Ned Talk. If you missed out on the show, you can download it as a podcast through our website at 1047thecave.com, wherever you find podcast at. Just search out Ned Talk or download it and listen to it through your Cave smartphone app. Thanks to Brian Tyndall, Corbin Campbell, Mike the Intern, Nick Fury. See you guys next Sunday.